United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, everybody don't mind silence your phones a little bit. Put them on vibrate. The reason I say it is I'm always one that does it anyway. And on public comments, each speaker gets 3 minutes. It's something that was implemented by these guys, so we're going to go by the rules. First is approval of previous minutes. Do I hear a motion?
I make one.
I'll second.
Could I say something about the minutes? Mr. Alton brought to my attention about what was in there, about what I said. I did say that we needed unity. I did not say that we needed, or Mr. Altizer had a vendetta against every council member.
Have been what?
That it states in there that I said that he had a vendetta against every council member. I stated that we need unity amongst every council member.
Well, it doesn't say you had a vendetta about it. The comment was made to the fact that the entire council was under fire from those accusations. I don't remember your exact words.
I don't know the exact words, but I didn't say Mr. Altizer had that.
Let's see. Johnny Smith encouraged order. The common sense by the council noted that every member of the town was targeted by accusations of 10 Altizer. Is that what you said?
I didn't word it that way, but I did encourage unity among all the meetings. And I did say that we were having ununity among the members, but I didn't pronounce Mr. Altizer's name.
Like I said, it might not be verbatim, but it's up to you all.
Is there correction that needs to be made in here? We could address that.
The minutes read, Johnny Smith encouraged order and common sense by the council and noted that every member of the town council was targeted by the accusations of Tim Altizer. And I don't have my handwritten notes in here. I'm not sure the exact words, but the comment was made that I took it that all of us, were being targeted and are being accused.
I just didn't mention the name.
Oh, no, you didn't.
No, I didn't mention
You're
the
right.
name.
Okay, you're right, you didn't mention the name, so, let's just remove that name. I see what you're saying, okay.
Okay, that being fixed, still have a motion on approval of previous minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Terry?
Yeah.
Okay, next we have the appointment of council member to be filled, vacancy. Y'all have anybody y'all wanna?
I would like to nominate Johnny Smith.
I second the motion.
You gotta have a second
Ask
on
if
the
there's
motion.
other-
Is there any more nominations?
You have to have seconds on the motion to nominate.
It's just a nomination, Mr.
It's a
Conlon.
nomination and then whether they accept it or not, isn't it?
Well, let's cut to the bottom line before you make me look up all of this. Are you wanting to nominate somebody yourself? Or am I just
Possibly.
looking it up for nothing? I'm just asking before we take a lot of time to get into that.
I nominate Dave Ratliff.
Okay, so I got 2 nominations.
Dave Ratliff?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, my impression would be that a second is not necessary for a nomination.
Okay, so in the way I take it, or way I've read, the first nominations who we vote on first, is that correct?
I think that's traditionally how we've done it, yes, sir.
Okay, so for Johnny, does anybody want to speak for him? Anybody? No comments? Okay, Kenny, on nominating
Motion.
Mr. Smith.
Need a motion to appoint Johnny Smith for the.
Tim done that. Tim made.
Well, he nominated him, but we need a motion to.
I'll make a motion. You need a motion? I'll make a motion.
Okay, second.
Don't you have to have a vote before you make a motion, make a nomination, I mean,
I think they're gonna have.
don't you have to have a vote on the nomination before you have the appointment?
Well, last time, I think there was a motion and a second, we voted.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So
Would you close the
you're
nomination?
making a motion, I hear a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Ken?
Aye.
Okay, now what am I voting on?
We're voting on Johnny Smith. We're just making a poll vote too, just so Kenny Shepherd's yes for Johnny Smith, Mr. Herring, yes. Greg Smith. Tina? Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay. So now, with that, we'll go back to Dave Brown. Is that correct, or is it first time? Because I did read it, and the way I took it was first.
Yeah, well, I think the motion carries 4-1.
Right. So there's no need to vote on
That is
Right.
business.
Okay, well, with that 4-1 vote, then John, you want, I guess you got your paperwork.
You want to be seated now?
Yeah, maybe you're gonna join, come on, get up there.
Yeah, get your little long yourself on that.
Mr. Rattler's not here
They
tonight.
wouldn't have a motion.
Mr. Rattler, he didn't come tonight.
His son had a basketball game. He called it.
Well, you know, if you're interested in being a council member, you need to show up and,
Well, I mean, there's probably no reason to talk about it, it's over with now.
well, I know.
Raise your right hand, and you can just, I'll read this and you can just say I do when I finish. I, Johnny Smith, having been appointed as council member for the town of Cedar Bluff, Virginia, for a term ending December 31st, 2020, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, that I will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties incumbent on me as council member according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
I do.
I'll get you a copy. You just be seated.
Okay, next on the agenda is public comment.
Connie Connie McFarland asked me to express her thanks towards John and Jennifer on where Joe had his stroke, and they came over and assisted. And she asked me to relay that to the town and council. Thank you.
Jim Altizer, 205 Old Kentucky Turnpike. I have support documentation for every issue that I've ever tried to address with the town. Mr. Mayor, I'd ask you to pass these around to the members of the council. Here are copies of the support documentation for the subject that I'll be addressing tonight. This council has recently had 2 vacancies, one by resignation and one by expulsion. These Virginia Code sections, which I have given you, outline the procedure as to how these seats are to be filled. While it's true that some Virginia Code sections do not override town charter provisions, I believe it's quite clear that for the filling of vacancies on this council, these Virginia Code sections supersede the town charter. Direct references to charters and wording such as notwithstanding any provision of law or charter to the contrary, I believe make it clear as to the duties of this town in filling these vacancies. I believe that within 15 days of each of these 2 vacancies, this council should petition the circuit court to issue a writ of election for these 2 vacancies. My position on this is reinforced by the actions of the towns of Tazewell, Chilhowie, and Luray, Virginia, using this method as they used this method to fill the vacancies on their own councils. Also, it appears that the town of Tazewell amended its charter in 2016 and as the wording is of the Cedar Bluff Town Charter. It was amended in 2016 to bring it in line with these code sections. The 2 interim appointments that you have made appear to be fine in these code sections. However, I believe that the problem here lies in that the town charter states that these 2 appointments will serve out the remainder of the unexpired terms. It appears to me that if the council desires, it may request in its petition to the circuit court that Mr. Herron be allowed to serve out the unexpired term of Mr. Widener due to the fact that that seat was up for re-election in 2018. However, my term would not have ended until 2020. And I believe that would mean that upon this council doing its statutory duty and filing a petition for writ of election with the circuit court, a special election will be ordered for my seat. And that special election will occur no later than with the November 2018 general election. This would mean that there would be 4 seats of this council being voted on in November. I ask that this council have the town attorney review these code sections to see if I'm correct in my understanding of the situation. And if I am correct, I ask that these 2 petitions for writ of election be submitted to the circuit court promptly. Also, if I'm found to be correct, in an effort to minimize the expense to the town in the filing of these 2 petitions for writ of election, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to give you a copy of the petition that the town of Luray used to hopefully minimize the time required by the town attorney in fulfilling the statutory duty. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any more public comment? Okay, next, Charles Craig. If you want to come up from Hill Studios, he's going to talk about the historic walkway project.
I'm Charlie Craig from Hill Studios, Roanoke, Virginia, and Mayor Dye and council members we all appreciate, our office rather appreciates allowing us this opportunity to come provide you with this presentation for this project. I'm going to need a couple minutes to distribute my materials and get the easel set up. What's that good about it?
For this
How are you doing today?
Neither do I.
one more, hold on. Don't go anywhere. Should I set this so that it's in your direction or for the folks
Is
out
it
here?
what we're looking at here?
Yeah,
Yeah, you should. I mean, if it's what we're looking at, that's fine. What
Okay.
they want to look at.
okay. You still probably can't see it, but. The, first of all, a little background on my association with the town of Cedar Bluff. I first became involved with the Phase 1 improvements along Main Street down here. That was in, I think that kicked off in November of 2011. I was involved with overseeing the construction administration of that project. And then right behind that came another portion which involved the signage that is along the street out there. So that's, I've had dealings off and on since 2011 with the town. And I'm always happy to return. And you can imagine how pleased I was when Jim gave me a call back in March of this past year and said, we're ready to start talking about these next phases. So we were delighted to hear that, the opportunity to come back and work with you folks. We met Jim McLaughlin and David Hill and myself came and met in March of this past year, 2017, for kind of an informal kickoff. We talked about first of all, the plan that you have in front of you there is the master plan that had been developed at that time. And so we looked at that plan, we walked the routes of some of those sidewalks and so forth that you see shown there, talked about some of the pros and cons, some of the things that had changed within the town during the time since that was first developed. And we decided to get together once again with individuals from the Virginia Department of Highways, since they had such a great stake in this, and also with the Nature Food Conservancy. So we met again about a month later with some members from both of those agencies. We talked again about what the program for the project would be. The Nature Conservancy voiced their concerns with Indian Creek, of course, and VDOT folks voiced their concerns about what we had planned to do and gave us some advice on proceeding, moving forward to expedite the project. We again walked the entire site and looked at some of the constraints, the physical constraints to that plan that you have in front of you on top. So our charge, we left that meeting with the charge of taking all those comments into consideration, modifying that plan as need be to suit some of the constraints that we had observed in our walkthrough. And we got back together again, our office rather met again with Jim in September. And if you turn to the next sheet, sheet number 2 there, you'll see the results of what we came up with as a modification to that existing plan there, or a modification to the original plan. Flip this over for the people out here too. And if you flip back and forth between the first sheet and the second sheet, you'll see that originally there was an idea that there would be a trail that would run all along Indian Creek. from Cedar Valley Drive all the way around the backside, and it's shown in kind of yellow dots and some red dashes. One of the things that we observed in our walkthrough was how rugged that terrain was on that far side of the creek. A lot of rock outcrops. In fact, you can see the rock outcrops just come right down the mountainside, run right across the bed of the creek, so there's some definite geologic formations going on there. And since that creek is so sensitive environmentally, we knew that to get in there and put any kind of a trail in would just, it would probably be next to impossible with all the federal requirements and constraints that we would have. So we immediately decided, well, let's not take the trail along the full length of the creek back there. Let's just take it around where the terrain is better suited to it. You see that reflected on the second plan, which shows the, it's labeled as phases 2, 3, and 4 improvements in the called a 5-foot wide interpretive trail. So if you flip back and forth, you'll see that we tremendously shortened that trail. There's a parcel of land there that has a bridge going across to it. Jim had a wonderful idea to turn that into a town park. He gave us some guidelines on what he'd like to see happening there. We tried to implement those. We also, another difference we have on the top sheet along Maple Lane, you'll see a proposed sidewalk down through there. Looking at the actual width of that roadway and the proximity of the private property along that, we just decided that would not be a suitable thing to do. It would limit that road so tremendously to go in and put in a sidewalk down through there. It was pretty narrow as it is, but it's a wonderful street, and we just really felt we would destroy the character of that street if we tried to go in and put a sidewalk. So we moved it a block down. We moved it down to Birch Lane. It still sort of accomplishes the same thing, but we have a much wider area to work with. We don't have a lot of houses that we would be interrupting the front yards. It would run along the side of former Governor Perry's home place there, so it provides a very good, for tourists coming into your town, it provides them an up-close look of the governor's home there, former governor's home. That's another thing that changed. And then, if you notice, looking at the second sheet over on the western side, you'll see a sidewalk that runs, kind of makes a loop around the neighborhood. It starts there at the former mill, and it runs along River Road, and then comes back into the municipal building here. So it kind of creates, it provides those residents there with a sidewalk on one side of the street. It would benefit folks getting exercise, benefit people taking the town tour, benefit children walking to the elementary school. So it has a lot of positive points, we felt. Those are the main changes from what originally had been proposed. Any questions so far before I move on any further? I'm just kind of giving a broad brush right now. Yes.
It might be good, since we mentioned around those sidewalks, to go ahead and mention that we want to extend the sidewalk from Old Kentucky Turnpike up to Indian Circle.
Glad you reminded me of that. That was also not shown as part of the original scheme. This would enable the folks that live in the apartments down there, and I think there's a few businesses down that way too. It provides them with a pedestrian link to the town center, which they currently don't have. They essentially have to walk on the shoulder of the road right now, so it links that portion of the population into the town center. That was also not part of the original scheme. I'm going to put, you folks don't have these. These are just enlargements of what you have here. It's kind of for the benefit of the folks out sitting out here. was the western portion of the town I was referring to, that we've shown a sidewalk that ties this neighborhood together. And this shows the shortened trail as we currently have it. It shows a couple of parks being created on property already owned by the town. It shows along Birch Lane, the sidewalk that goes down by the governor's house. Those are essentially the things I was talking about.
Of course, that Birch Lane is a direct tie-in from their Cedar Valley Drive over to this new development, the Indian Trail
Okay,
and
the new
Indian
park, correct. If you flip to your third sheet there, please, gentlemen. This is an enlarged view of Indian Park, and we're calling it interpretive area A. To distinguish one from the other, we're calling one A and one B. But it, you see the bridge here that comes across, so that gives you a point of reference, the existing bridge that comes across. So that's what is being proposed for that triangle shape of land that's there. You'll also see a portion of the trail on the far side. It's actually, I think it was probably originally cut for agricultural purposes. There's a ditch right at the foot of the mountain. And my thinking is at some point years ago, maybe several generations ago, someone cut a ditch through there to prevent all that runoff from coming off the mountain and inundating the flat land there, because it would just turn it into a bog. So my impression is that it's not a natural feature, but it was cut for agricultural purposes. However, now it's been there long enough that it qualifies as a wetland, and we have to treat it as such. This is the park I was just talking about there. Here's the existing bridge that comes across, and then this triangular shape of land there. This would be primarily an interpretive park, interpretive area. It would include it would have enough open space there that people can go there for recreational purposes if they so choose. It's not big enough for a football field or a baseball field, but you can throw a frisbee, or you can exercise your pet there, or you can meet your friends, have a picnic, something like that. There would be a gazebo in the, I guess that's the northeastern corner up here. It's not very large, but it's just something that enables activities to occur there under some sort of a cover. Maybe in the fall when the town's having their festival. I know you utilize your town green out here quite extensively. This will provide an extension of that for the same purposes. If you wanted to have music down there, or just whatever event came to mind down there.
On that land, that ditch that you're talking about, you're saying that's wet water. Does that mean that we cannot clear it
That's correct.
or mow it? What are the chances are that ditch is not very wide, 6 or 7 feet? Corps of Engineers, if you furnish land somewhere in the area twice as big and you can open it up, they will swap out land with you. Could that not be done there?
Well, right now, the Nature Conservancy has already spent a lot of money in that area down there. They want to preserve it primarily because it feeds into Indian Creek, and there is the issue with the mussels, the endangered species of mussel. They don't want anything done to that ditch through there. First of all, it's a wetland now. Second of all, it does contain, it has been identified as habitat for an endangered species, or several endangered species. So we've pretty much got to march to the beat of their drum on this, you know, if we don't wanna run up against, years of fighting against the bureaucracy on this, we need to kinda do what they ask us to do. But like I said, they've already spent a lot of money down there planting, plants that are moisture, wet-loving plants around the perimeter of that whole triangle down there. So that's one of the things that the interpretive signage that we put in place will educate people through. School children, visitors to Cedar Bluff, they'll be able to walk along the interpretive trail there, and there'll be plaques or signs very similar to the ones that are along Main Street right now.
That answered my question. I just knew that, you know, with Corps of Engineers, you can do away with that if you give them something twice
Yeah.
the size.
Yeah, I know the Virginia Department of Highways runs into that quite a bit. They have to, they'll own a wetland, but at the same time, they have to create a wetland somewhere else, like you said. It's a trade-off.
I understand Dr. Mustard, I understand it.
On the sheet right after, the sheet behind this one has a sketch showing the, that gazebo I was talking about. It's, Mr. McLaughlin suggested that we design something very simple, something that would mimic the architectural character of the house that's on the adjacent property down there. I guess it's a Queen Anne style. I'm not an architectural expert by any means, but we tried to pick up on some of the detailing. So that's what you see there is sort of what we have in mind for that gazebo or that shelter. It's has a floor area about 12 by 16. As we get further into this project and determine that we need something bigger or smaller, we can adjust it accordingly. But right going into it right now, we just made it 12 by 16. Has a standing seam metal roof on it. It'll be made of timber, painted white. A pretty simple building, but I think it'll be quite functional. Has nice overhangs on it so the rain won't blow in on the stage area.
That'll be a nice place for people who are utilizing the park and the walking trails to get out of the rain and event weather necessity.
We would certainly provide power to that building. There's going to be lights in the park anyway. And I don't know if you picked up on that or not. There's a lot of detail in that little sketch there, but there are some symbols there that represent lights. So the park will have lights for security purposes. And I was thinking about you gentlemen in laying out this parking lot. I know when you're doing your surveillance at nighttime, you have to pull in and you come into a dead end area doing surveillance, then you've got to back out again. What we try to do here is create a circle so that you can just drive right in, do your surveillance, circle around and come right back out again without having to go through the backup motion. So we were trying to take that into consideration too. It's an odd configuration, but we didn't of parking, but we didn't want to dominate this small parcel of land with parking. A lot of the people in town will probably walk here, so this is most likely going to be visitors or perhaps a van from a nursing home or something that might bring some of their residents out here. You'll notice a couple handicap parking spaces there where they can unload handicapped individuals. But it's only just, I believe it was 8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 4. Yeah, 8 parking spaces.
And this park is planned primarily just for continuous casual use, not necessarily for events. So just to limit the parking, people want to pull up and put in some laps around the trail.
Put in those laps.
Right. It's not somewhere that we have plans to hold events in this park.
But it would make a nice overflow
It would.
for some of your seasonal activities.
What's the total length of this walking trail? I mean,
The total length of this trail here, oh gosh, I don't think I have those numbers. It's a little over 2,000 feet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's I think when I was doing the takeoff for estimating purposes, I came up with something like 2250 or something like that, so it's not real long. You could do a couple of laps around it and you'd be pretty close to a mile,
Close to a mile is what I was wondering.
yeah.
And your plans for lighting, did you take into account if you down lighting, or you wouldn't be looking into a street light or something like that? You'd be looking.
We haven't gotten that far with it yet, but that's a very important point that we would want to consider. It would be probably a style similar to what you have along Main Street currently, but it would be a downlighting so that it didn't shine into neighbors' windows. And if we did have to, we could always put shields on those lights to further diminish the overflow off of the property.
And they can be put on shorter poles, so it's just, not.
Yeah, these
Just
poles
lighting
won't be
the
as
area.
tall as what is along the street here.
Downlighting just has a way of illuminating the project and not everything around it.
Exactly, you don't want to, electricity's expensive enough, isn't it? That's pretty much the essence of that scheme, interpretive area A. It has a little bridge that goes across that ditch. It has a little 5-foot trail that will be really non-obtrusive to the vegetation and the terrain over there. We're still looking at several different alternatives for the trail. One alternative is a trail that's raised up. It's on a platform and it's elevated with, typically it's something like a telephone pole. But those are great because they don't impact the land after they're built, but they impact the land more than a trail on grade during construction. So you got to think about getting the equipment in there to build it. How destructive is that going to be?
And the Nature Conservancy will have to give approval for
And
whatever.
exactly, yeah, the Nature Conservancy is really going to be looking over our shoulder on this, wherever we're close to the Indian Creek or the ditch.
They have, on that side of the ditch, that part of the trail, they have a conservation easement on that property, even though we now own it. Their easement, that agreement tells us exactly what we can and can't do.
Looking back to this sheet here, which I think was the second one in the package, I'm going to next talk about it's Indian Park Area B, and it's down there near where the Norfolk Southern Railroad crosses over the roadway, crosses over Indian Creek Road. It looks pretty thin, and it is thin. It's only like about 50 feet wide, but it provides an opportunity to put some overflow parking down there and also makes for another trailhead. If you keep turning in your packet, you'll eventually come to an exhibit that looks something like this. It's long and skinny. There's Indian Creek Road here. There's the Norfolk Southern overpass here.
And this area B is just upstream on the other side of that Victorian house.
Exactly.
From area A.
Exactly. So this little overflow parking area only contains, you can count them, there's a total of 10 spaces here, one of which is handicap space up towards the end, has a little handicap symbol there. And it, again, is just another way to get onto the trail, or if the parking lot back at the triangular shaped park is full, you can come on down the road just a short ways and try to find a parking space here.
And then you could walk right down the trail to area.
And end up right back where you would have been to begin with. There's a little structure labeled there, Trailhead Shelter with benches. And again, there's another bridge that crosses over that drainage ditch. Flip over to your last sheet, you'll see what that little trailhead shelter with benches looks like. It's just something to get out from, if you get caught in a thunderstorm, it's just a way to get out of the rain for a while. But again, it tries to pick up on the architectural style of that house that it's next to. very simple, couple benches, and, so like I said, it's just a way to, or if you just wanna sit down and take a break, you can do that in that little structure. Does anybody have any questions about those two parks before I move on? I know you want me to.
Are there any restrooms or anything like that for them?
There are no restrooms on this.
So we have finished by next week.
How many hours is that? I wish.
I've been excited about this. I talked to Jim about it.
It's gonna be so nice.
I know Mr. McLaughlin's gonna be all excited about
This,
it.
this ties Indian Creek and that Indian Park into the turnpike, connects the turnpike with sidewalk to our main street. You'll literally be able to walk on sidewalk from Indian Circle all the way to Richlands High School out in the west end of town, so.
I've read, Mr. McLaughlin shared with us a walking tour narrative that he had put together. I think he put it together, is that right?
Yeah.
So, this really kind of expands what visitors to the town can look at and see, and it provides them with a stable surface so that whether it's someone pushing a stroller or baby carriage or a handicapped individual, it provides a unobstructed access to see all the things that Cedar Bluff has to offer. Were there any questions about the portion of the sidewalk that's over to the west here? It goes along River Road, loops around, comes back, ties back into the municipal building. Any questions about that? The way that the current cross slope on River Road is such that it pitches water, for the most part, pitches it towards the river, which makes sense. If I were designing the road, I'd do that too. So for that reason, we're putting this sidewalk and curve, there will be a curve, a short curve, a 4-inch curve versus a 6-inch curve. We're putting that on the high side of the road so we don't have to spend money on storm drainage, box culverts and pipes and stuff like that. We're just gonna let the water run right across the road like it's currently doing. But on the high side of the road, we'll have the curb, a 2-foot grass strip for mailboxes and what have you, and then sidewalk. Section down from Burke's Lane by the governor's, former Governor Perry's house. Again, it's just a 5-foot walk. There'll be some storm drainage issues there to take care of because there's an existing storm scepter, which is a purifying device before it releases water into Indian Creek. So we'll have to make some modifications to that to tie in some new storm drainage to it. And then the section of walk that goes to Indian Creek Apartments, same thing for that. That will just be built on the high side of the pavement so we don't have storm drain system to install. It'll just be a 5-foot wide walk with a 4 or 6-inch high curb. Where that comes to the bridge, we'll stop it because VDOT doesn't like you to put any more weight on their bridges than necessary. So we'll ramp it down when we get to the bridge, so pedestrians will essentially be walking on the existing surface of the bridge, and then it'll ramp back up again at the other end. Keep all that weight off of the bridge. That's about all I have as far as talking about the design. I have some information for you to look at regarding the cost of this, but are we ready to move on to that yet? I don't want to leave this if there's any lingering questions.
Did somebody take a look at the bridge to ensure that it was good for several years down the road, the bridge?
Which the bridge going over to the park? That will probably be something that we have to do during the course of this project, is do to come up with a weight limit for it.
Okay.
Right now, I don't think it has any posting for a weight limit, is that right?
It doesn't, and we talked about, at any rate, maybe just putting private vehicles only, no trucks, you
Yeah.
know. Although, you know, it has accommodated trucks in the past.
That bridge is very substantial, because I've looked at it from on the underside. I was surprised by how substantial it was, but just to make everybody sleep better at night, the highway department may want to have an investigation done on that, so a weight limit can be assigned. I will say, and I'm glad you raised that question, I meant to mention this, the improvements that are going on in area A, this part here, the larger of the two, the improvements that we're doing here, we're not proposing any asphalt paving in there, because asphalt paving equipment is heavy and it's wide. So we're not gonna be bringing in paving equipment and that sort of thing
And
across
also,
that bridge.
asphalt sheds the water, we want to keep it impervious.
Yeah, yeah. We're trying to do, the concrete walks, the concrete trucks can pull up to the bridge and pump the concrete across the bridge into, say, a front end loader or something like that. And from that point, it could be distributed around to construct the sidewalks. Where we do have areas, this kind of pinkish area here, will be like a brick pavers. So the water will run down through the pavers and not give the people at the Nature Conservancy any heartburn. They don't want you to run any shed any water into the habitat of their endangered species. So the whole idea of this is to keep, well, not the whole idea, but a primary concern of this was to keep any heavy weight off of that bridge during construction.
Those parking spaces that labeled stabilized turf.
Yeah, stabilized turf, that's really a combination of crushed stone and topsoil that's compacted, and you seed it and you mow it. So when it's not being used, unless somebody comes in and loses 2 quarts of oil from the car on it, you know, which does happen. But it looks like lawn area for the most part, but it is stable enough. It doesn't get muddy during wet seasons and that type of thing. Well, we'll move on to the numbers and if everybody's in agreement. I have no grooves in any of my fingers at all, but my hands are so dry from this cold weather. In fact, I think I gave a lady 2 20s for gas rather than 1. Well, that'd be great. Did everybody get one? Got any extras you want to get rid of? Okay, rid of extras, okay. This, as you all are probably aware, I'm just going to kind of reiterate it a little bit for the benefit of some of the folks that are here. This project, well, phase 1 was a grant, what do they call them, local area participation. That's what the VDOT's, Virginia Department of Highways, terminology for it is. It's a program in which the federal government puts up some money for improvements to localities, and the locality themselves put up some money. And there's a ratio. 80% federal money, 20% local money. And regardless of whether you've got a $1 million project or a $100,000 project, that ratio stays the same. So I'm going to be talking about participation, local participation, and when I say that, I mean that 20% that the locality puts up to get 80%, 8 cents or 80 cents on the dollar from the Federal Highway Administration. It's a wonderful program. It's laced with a lot of bureaucracy, unfortunately. If we move forward on this, you'll certainly find out about that from Mr. McLaughlin here. He'll be complaining every day about this hurdle and that hurdle that have to be overcome. But it's rationalized by saying, well, it's federal money. You know, if you want that money, you've got to jump through these hoops. This first page here, anticipated cost analysis. What I've tried to do here is break down how this program works. There's some numbers here, some pretty substantial numbers, and these have been documented by the Virginia Department of Highways. They're not numbers that I made up. So at one point, the town had $1.8 million in the grant money. That was from the grants. Now, to use any of that, you'd have to match it 20%, 20% of 1.8 million, which is a big chunk of change. The first phase, which has already been built out here, operated out of that pot of money, if you want to think of it that way. And that pot of money was drawn down by $395,116. That's how much the federal government put into that project out there. The locality, the town of Cedar Bluff, matched it with 20%. Now, I have prepared a cost estimate of the things that you have seen here. You can flip over to the second page, and they're kind of broken down into the elements that I tried to single out when we were looking at those plans. There's that interpretive area A and the trailhead. Here's the components in there. And this is schematic at this point. We know that there are some things that will come up during the design of the project. There's some things that we just don't fool with at this level. We just try to look at the main elements. But the total construction cost, this will be what we would look from a contractor to bid to build this project. Interpretive area A, $191,400. Interpretive area B, or area B, which was that long skinny plan, just under $70,000. The interpretive trail, which is what's running along on the far side of that drainage ditch, $58,600. Next page continues that, gives you the breakdown. The old Kentucky Turnpike and Indian Creek Road sidewalk, just under $89,000. Birch Lane, $77,400. That loop in the residential neighborhood, $135,000. So if you add all those up, the construction cost, which is the number that we'd be looking from a bidder on this project, if we did it all at once, is $621,170. I added in there testing and inspection, which is required, of about 5%, and then a contingency of 10%. So that bottom number there, $713,347, that represents what it would take to build these things you've looked at today. Now, here's what gets interesting. Flip back over to the first page again, please. Remember me talking about that 70% or that 80%, 20% sharing, cost sharing? Well, of that $713,000, the federal government is going to pay 80% of that. Cedar Bluff only has to pay 20% of that. That's how that grant works. if you, I'm not gonna insult your intelligence by reading this for you, but that's essentially what this explains. Of that construction cost, the government share will be $570,677. Cedar Bluff's share will be $142,669. And if you add those together, it gives you that bottom line number that we just looked at. Okay, after that expenditure, remember we talked about the, up in the top paragraph there, the 1.8 million, and then when phase one was built, it got drawn down to where the balance is 1,414,472. That's in the second paragraph. That supposedly is how much money is in the pot today on behalf of Cedar Bluff. It's being held by the Virginia Department of Highways. Essentially, they administer the distribution of the funds. Money comes from the federal people, but the local or the various state highway departments do the distribution.
Where did you see, where did you have that?
I'm sorry. Here's the construction costs,
Okay,
and then right here, 1,414,772.
how we gonna end up with this?
You've already got it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
That's what you got.
Yeah. So out of that $1.4 million, the feds are gonna spend $576.77. So they're still there'll still be a balance of $843,794 in the Cedar Bluff pot that the highway department's holding for you. We're not even spending half of that money. Down below here, I talked about an analysis that Jim McLaughlin prepared, which showed how much money the town had already spent over the past few years that can be used towards that match.
That's the last page.
If you turn to the last page, you'll see some of Jim's handiwork there. And VDOT has reviewed this, the Virginia Department of Highways has reviewed this. The town's already spent $179,546 on acquiring property, acquiring the land, doing some upgrades to that bridge down there, some storm drainage work. The highway department will count that towards Cedar Bluff's match. And it's money that's already been spent. So, we turn back to the first page again, to kind of pick up with that. Cedar Bluff's share of this construction cost is $142. As Jim McLaughlin has indicated, the town's already spent $179,000. So you got a balance of $36,877 sitting there of your match money. Now the one cost I did not include in this cost estimate is what the soft costs are. And we make a distinction, it's kind of a colloquial term, I guess it's nothing technical about it. Hard costs are asphalt and concrete and pipes and lights and stuff. Soft costs are what it takes to design all that, to get it reviewed by the agencies and what have you, testing and inspections. It's all the things that human beings basically do in order to get a project ready to go. So what I've put together here is the soft cost that I anticipate for this project. We're not far enough along to have these numbers really hard and fast yet, but I use numbers from projects that have been in our office for the past couple of years, comparable projects. For example, I'm estimating the survey of all this work we're going to be doing, the topographic survey, underground utilities, the edges of pavement, sidewalks, all that stuff that has to be done by a surveyor. I'm estimating that at $35,000. That's everything we've talked about here tonight. The Environmental Protection Agency document, that's you would not believe how much red tape there is involved with that. But it is to show the federal agencies that we're not hurting any fish or wildlife, that we're not hurting any bats. Bats are really big right now, believe me. There's certain times of the year you cannot cut down trees because that's where the bats are mating. There's about 7 agencies, Historic Resources, Virginia Department of Historic Resources. They're very interested in Cedar Bluff because it's an historic town. We're going to have to jump through so many hoops to get them to approve this project. It's just bureaucracy, but supposedly it makes our lives better. I like to think that anyway. I couldn't go another day if I didn't think that. Transportation Management Plan, that's a plan that's required by the Department of Highways that shows how are you going to manage the day-to-day traffic flow during construction. You're going to use barrels, you're going to use flashing lights, you're going to use pilot cars, you're going to use flaggers. It's a plan that they have to review and approve before they let you move forward with the project. I estimate that will cost about $20,000 to have our engineers prepare that. Civil engineering, I mentioned earlier, storm drainage. There'll be some utility work involved with this. I've got them at $25,000. Site design and project management, that's what Hill Studio is and will be doing for you, $50,000. And then construction observation, that's required. You have to have an engineer on the site every day to fill out logs of what was done. Keeps a diary, if you will. That's also required by the federal government. So that's $205,000 in soft costs. And as I mentioned before, up in the middle of the page here, the Cedar Bluff T21 account, the T21 account has $843,794. Everybody see that number there? That's how much is still in the pot. So they're going to pay 80% of that $205,000. And Cedar Bluff has to pick up the other 20%. Okay, and I mentioned that Cedar Bluff had a balance after construction of $36,877. So that money, that balance is going to go towards these soft costs for the 20% match. And according to my numbers, after all is said and done, Cedar Bluff will have a shortfall of $4,122 after all this is done. Now, shortfall sounds like a nasty word, and it is, if you're looking at your checkbook. But going forward, there are a number of additional expenditures that the town of Cedar Bluff will be obligated to do, which will count towards that match. Things I don't even have here. Jim McLaughlin's time, administrative time, that counts as a match. If the surveyor says, hey, we need some help trying to locate some of these utilities out here. Do you have any people that have been with the utility department, since 20, 30 years that can help us out? That individual's time counts towards a match. Their paycheck, the time they spend assisting the surveyor. If Cedar Bluff Forces crew, maintenance crews, maybe they take the responsibility of maintaining the erosion and sediment controls. You can get a storm on a Sunday when the contractor's not here, and your silt fence gets knocked down or whatever, or the town's maintenance people could go over and make those repairs. That money becomes part of the match. So going forward, I think $4,122 is chicken feed.
Yeah.
I think during the course of a couple of years that this project will take to transpire, that shortfall there will disappear just like that. I really do. And and there's some things that we can do to tweak the budget, the construction budget too. Jim and I talked about maybe on that triangular parcel of land, there was we had shown a deck there where the Indian Creek and the ditch converge, a raised wooden deck there. Thought it might be a nice place to just kind of come and stand on, and maybe even fish off of it or something. We could cut the size of that deck back, or maybe eliminate it altogether to be built later on. But there's a lot of things that we can do to tweak the budget to get rid of that $4,000. But like I said, I don't see it as being it's when you've got $400,000 deficit that you really start biting your nails. Any questions on these numbers? I know I've run through them really fast.
I know you know this, but our public doesn't have this sheet, and they don't know that you used the word that Cedar Bluff had spent $179,000 towards this. It might be better to clarify that
A lot of that
most
was
of that was
donated.
donated.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Papers or whatever, we had, storm drain, that was $66,000 donation. Site preparation for Union Park, that was a donation of $4,000. The stream bank repair by Connection Service, $10,000, just a clarification for those who
Sure,
think we
yeah,
might spend
I
money.
definitely misspoke that. A lot of that was donations. And who's to say you might not get some more donations going down the road too?
The property,
You know, you've got,
$44,000.
you've seen a lot of generosity at this point by the state of Virginia and their interest in protecting Indian Creek and all. And I can't see that stopping. You know, to me, I think they're going to continue to be interested in Cedar Bluff. I hope so. Anyway.
Well, I think this is a catalyst to encourage that.
I'm getting a little hoarse. Does anybody have any questions? I'd love to answer them for you though, if I can.
Need some water.
You may sit down and shut up now.
No.
But really, that's all I have to present.
Sir, Eddie, your experience of time frame, how long?
The longest component of what I've talked about tonight will be getting that environmental impact statement done. I'm working on 2 right now, and I've been working on one of them for 8 months, and I'm about halfway through. It's because there's so many agencies involved, and a lot of them won't sign off on it until somebody else signs off, and that one won't. It's almost like a domino thing. You know, once you get everybody in agreement, they just kind of fall like dominoes. But reaching that point is extremely difficult and extremely time consuming. And this project, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time to have Indian Creek down here. It's a valuable natural resource, but for that reason, a lot of state and federal agencies want to know everything that's happening there. So that will involve some additional time and so forth to get that pushed through. The biggest, like I said, the most time-consuming portion of this probably will be the getting that NEPA document done, but there'll be things happening simultaneously with that, like the design work will be, and the civil engineering work, and those soft costs I mentioned, it'll be occurring simultaneously. Now, once let's say we had this project ready to go out to bid, all of our environmental hurdles have been cleared, and we're good to go, and we're advertising the project. I would anticipate a project like this could be, if it got started in March, late February or March, I think it could be finished up before Christmas of that same year. I think it would be about an 8 to 10 month project if we get a good contractor. It could possibly go as much as 12 months, depending on the contractor that we get. Now these federal projects are required. You are required by law to accept the bid, the lowest bid, unless you can find some evidence that they have had some issues in the past, and then that happens sometimes, and contractors may not be allowed to take the project. But if they've kept their nose clean and they haven't done anything illegal and they've got the lowest bid, you have to take them. But sometimes you don't get as much experience, experience in the field translates to getting things done efficiently. And,
Is there a time limitation in the utilization of that balance from federal funds? That's the balance that we'll still have?
the federal people want to just know that the money's being spent wisely, that's being drawn down. They don't, if you're making forward progress, they don't worry too much about, they're not worried really at all. I've never heard a complaint, although I've been told sometimes there is a possibility of a complaint, but I've inquired at the highest level I can go to, and I've been told, as long as you're making progress on the project, everybody's happy. They just want to know it's moving.
But I mean, when this one's finished, when this one were to be finished, there's still a balance.
Oh, well, that might be a topic of another meeting, because we would love to be able to help you find a way to spend that money. It's probably too much to go into tonight, but our office would love to assist you in that. And if you want to do the math on that, you can take that balance. What was it again? 679,000? You divide that by 4, and that's how much Cedar Bluff's match would be. So a little over 150,000. So for $150,000, you can get $680,000.
It's pretty good. Cause your land counts as that too, right?
Yeah, all the stuff that was shown, the donations, and the land, that sort of thing. Administrative time, town forces helping out. There's a lot of stuff that town forces can do. We always have it in our specifications that after a disturbed area is seeded with turf grass, it has to be mowed at least after it is established. The contractor is responsible for mowing it 2 times. That's just to make sure it is established. Well, I've had projects in which the locality said, hey, our people will cut the grass. How much money will you knock off your bid, to let our people cut the grass for you? Something as simple as that. So, well, I'm gonna sit down if everybody feels like you got a grip on this.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a copy of the maps and the cost information, I believe.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you need to go, do whatever.
I
you
do.
want to
But my wife told me she wasn't gonna wait up for me, so
Thanks for coming.
glad to be here.
Okay, next is the Crossroads Engineer.
They're not here, so we don't really have any updates on this.
No updates, the town manager report.
Your 2018 meeting schedule is underneath your packet, so you have a copy of that. In January each year, we usually get a motion to approve our budgeted contribution to CART, and that is $500 local funds and $500 matching grant from the Virginia Commission for the Arts for a total of $1,000. So we really need to get a motion to approve that.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I make the motion.
Second. Jerry, do you say?
Second.
John?
Yeah.
Okay, and also, we're doing some improvements to the fire station. We're in the process right now of having carpet and vinyl installed in the meeting room and the adjoining bathroom. And that's being paid for by funds, the renter account, that the fire department they raise those funds, they're fundraising activities. That's going to be just under $4,000. And also, we have the materials purchased to put the new roof on the whole back side of the fire station building. And that has already been in the budget, it's already in the budget, and we were using funds that John Absher notified us of in a previous meeting. That'll be part of that $15,000 grant that we got. And I might mention this, there was an additional $2,000 grant from the county for striping for one of our garbage trucks, and we just got that completed. So one of the trucks has been restriped, and that was an additional $2,000 grant from the county, just for that purpose. That's it.
I think we got another fire truck strike too.
Yeah, that's the one I'm referring to, yeah.
That's it, garbage.
Oh, I meant fire truck, did I say garbage truck?
Fill our heavy rescue or garbage truck.
Fire truck.
Don't strike garbage.
Yeah, it needs some work done.
Is that all you got?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, next is a payment of bills. Any discussion on the bills? Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to pay.
There's a second.
I'll second.
No more discussion on anything? Any questions? Okay, the town department reports.
Okay, the police department had 17 traffic stops, issued 7 summonses, responded to 24 calls, patrolled 3,827 miles. And I'd like to say also that our police department is doing an excellent job. I've heard many positive statements about the police department.
Fire departments had 3 monthly meetings, responded to 2 calls during the month, and they had their annual Christmas dinner with 15 members attending. Total hours of meeting and training, 80.5 hours. Hours responding to incidents, 22. And also, I have a paper here on fire department end of the year report. I'm not going to read all this. I'm just going to touch on in February we applied for the Department of Forestry grant and were awarded a 50-50 matching grant in May. This grant enabled us to replace a lot of hoses that exceeded its intended lifespan. In April we had our first ISO audit, which brought the ISO rating down for the residents of the town. This drop in the rating should reflect a drop in fire insurance premium for homeowners and businesses. And I just want to add on my own that I think our ISO rating was better than Richland's this past time. We responded to 32 calls for the year without anyone being injured. Firefighter Billy Smith completed the requirements to become a fire instructor with the Department of Fire Programs. Firefighters Billy Smith and Chuck Peters completed the Firefighter 2 certification. So that's pretty much my report.
Water utility department, they repaired one main line leak and flushed one sewer main, and they replaced or fouled several water meters.
The meters have frozen. Well, takes them out, puts them where it's warm until they,
Oh, you mean it's
sometimes they can do it right in his vehicle. And most of them, we were able to just reuse. We did have to actually replace 2 or 3 that were burst by the freezing.
Okay. Any unfinished business?
I got a question on big blue truck we have sitting down Speedy Loop. That truck, in my opinion, is no benefit to the town. I know we got it through federal, Dave Mills got that for us, federal surplus. And we need other things in this town besides that truck. We need that truck, we need a couple police vehicles. And I just think that maybe we should consider selling that truck and taking the money and any grants that we can come up with and purchase what I just mentioned. Dump truck, it doesn't have to be a new dump truck, it can be a good used one. But I just wonder what everybody else thought about that. Just wanna put it out there. What do you think about it, Jim?
Sounds like a good idea. We could either sell that at legal advertisement or at the local auction. And
Well, do
use-
we have to put that out for bid? Can it not be after 1 year, can it not be just sold?
It has to be either legally advertised for bids, sealed bids, or sold at public auction. Which, either case, that's what you're doing, you're selling it to the highest bidder.
When you put an advertisement out for a highest bidder, is there an obligation to take the highest bid?
We always put a disclaimer that we reserve the right to reject any and all bids, if you go that route.
That's if you go the public route.
Yeah.
If you have somebody who wants to trade a dump truck or something other for it, can you just trade it? Or do you have to?
I think we had that problem with the engineers here, did they wanted the truck, and there's no way we could work it out where they could end up with it, so.
I know I won't say I know, I think when we got into this before, that there were some time limitations before you could dispose of things that had been picked up as surplus.
And that one has exceeded, I'm sure, the time limit. That's something we would verify.
Do you have to have a motion to put it up for public auction?
What you'll be
Reserve
doing,
bid?
what you'll need to do, if you all decide to do this, is declare it as surplus and authorize it, advertise for the highest bidder.
Have a motion
How
for
you
that?
gonna get a price on it?
Would you all prefer that it be sold by legal advertisement, take sealed bids on it, or would you prefer that it go to the local auction?
Sealed bid.
Well, if it goes to the local auction, you
You
can't
have to
put a
take what
reserve
they-
on it,
No.
you have to take what they
No,
give you.
usually,
That would be
you
the
probably
best
could, but they don't normally want you to do that.
No, don't charge
No, they won't have that.
Yeah, they won't do that.
Plus they get a percentage of it.
Yeah, they get a certain percentage of that too, so I don't think we need to go that route.
Just advertise for sealed bids? Okay. And I've prepared those several times.
You
so.
didn't anticipate any future use for that for town? did you?
No, I think it'd be a good idea. It's been used very little, and we do have other needs that we can apply those funds to.
I know two of our police cars need
If you all,
replaced.
so I would just.
How you gonna put a value on it? So you'll know whether you're gonna accept a bid or not. How you gonna, I mean,
Well, there should be a book value out there
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, we can get in fact, I did have one.
It was 25.
Yeah, I had, well, we don't want to mention numbers here, but we will make sure that before we accept the bid, we'll make sure we've got,
Well,
you know, what we, pardon?
We might be able to help us.
I can figure it out. I can do you a printout on it.
So it'd be a motion
Are you
to,
making a motion,
to
Jerry?
declare it surplus and advertise for sealed bids.
All right,
That's your
I'll
motion.
make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any more discussion, everybody? Go ahead.
And I vote yes.
Aye.
All aye.
Any more unfinished business? Okay, next on the agenda, new business. Any new business, guys? Okay, no more new business. I was gonna, say something just for a second. I normally, I don't like to brag about what I do or how I do stuff, but a few people in the town, a lady contacted me, you know, I don't know where it come from, one of you guys or from the town or whatever, that, you know, I'm not sitting here at the town hall, but when I first started running, you know, I talked to Jim, and he actually don't want people laying in the town hall all day because he likes to get your work done.
But you're welcome,
Right.
yeah.
So, you know, not reading the paper for 30 minutes or doing your stuff. So I don't come by the town, sign checks or something simple, but I just don't brag, because I see people at Richlands and other places, their wives putting on Facebook, another great job by the mayor, another great job by the council. I just don't work like that, but, you know, it just kind of bothered me. But just a few things, you know, I receive about 30 calls a week from the town. I actually contacted Jim. I said, please, you know, don't give my cell phone number anymore. You know, I had WVVA come to the dealership, and I mean, I hid out from them. I mean, I don't like confrontation. I don't like a bunch of mess. I had the mayor from Tazewell and the mayor from Richlands. They want to get with me and start putting ideas together. Of course, I said, before I do that, I want to talk to these guys. So that's stuff. I called my wife the other day. I took my day off. Well, I took elderly people to the doctor in Cedar Bluff on my day off last week because they were sick. That's stuff I do, but I don't brag about it. I call VDOT all the time. I ask for, you know, could you speed this up? When I talk to Jim, like this walkway stuff, it's been exciting since I started.
We've had several conversations.
Me and Tim Trent, you know, the fish ladder. We want the fish ladder down here. I've contacted Jeff Taylor. They've already met with the lady. I mean, it's still in progress, but again, that's stuff I don't put in the paper. My wife, she goes to the schools and reads. She volunteers thousands of dollars. We spend months after months after months, and I don't say a word. I mean, she volunteers all the time. We go to the school, read to the kids. I go to all the ribbon cuttings. Haven't missed any ribbon cuttings. I go to the basketball games, football games. They had a college signing last week. They wanted the mayor to come and speak. I went, you know. Go to the old folks home because of Dr. Moore, my guy that delivered me. He's at the old folks home. I like helping those guys out. And, you know, when the road's bad, as you can tell Terry, I shovel our neighbors' driveways. But again, I don't brag about it because, you know, when I ran, my votes kind of spoke for themselves. I was a write-in, and I got, you know, 72%. Jim asked me one time, he said, we need to have a little kayak trip event set up before Richlands. That was on a Tuesday. By Sunday, I had 102 people kayaking. The excitement got Jim so much, he went to Walmart and bought him a kayak. I'm going down the river talking to people, and here comes Jim flying by. I said, what are you doing? He said, bought me a kayak. I mean, that was from Tuesday till Sunday, 102 people showed up. You was there. That's stuff I like to do. You know, even when Kenny Shepherd, I called Kenny a couple times. Hey man, I didn't even know he couldn't drive at the time. I said, do you need me to come get you? Do you need cigarettes, Cokes, pots, food? You know, Kenny can verify, but again, I don't brag about it. I've got 20 tons of gravel already donated to this project. I've got 20 tons donated to our landing for a kayak. I've got a check for $365 that will be presented next month to go in for the wood, if we want wood for our landings, or if we want wood for this stuff. You know, I went and bought hams for the police department. Of course, I still have yours, but I didn't brag about it. I mean, that's stuff I like to do. So I am involved in the town, but I think, you know, Jim can run the town. I don't have to come in here and say, Jim, do this, Jim, do. I've never done that to you. But also, you're more welcome, these guys, or y'all more welcome to have a full-time job, actually 2 full-time jobs. But you're more welcome to, I guess, come hang out with him. I'm just not going to do that. Yeah. But for me not being seen at the town, it's just, I call, hey Jim, you know.
When you're a public servant, you're always going to be criticized. It's so easy to criticize and second guess, but that's just something you have to get a tough shell.
Yeah,
I guess. But
yeah, and it's not. I got thick skin. I work in the car business. I mean, if there's something wrong with the car business, we pick on each other till you about ready to quit. It's just, you know, I want my fellow men to know I do a lot for the town. You know, if something needs done, I get it done. When Edgewater Drive needed paved, I called them. I said, man, put us up front. Do what you need to do. I mean, we get stuff done. When John Atcher gives us a big donation, Jim asked for what, 7,000? I asked for 15.
7,500.
7,500, so it gives 15. Yeah, little stuff, but I'm not that type of guy. I'm not going to brag, and like I said, I'm not going to be seen here at the town much. I told Jim, you know, if you want me to start coming in signing checks every other week, no problem. They normally bring them to me, but I like working with everybody, and I just want that to kind of be squashed. I'm thick-skinned. You can't hurt my feelings. It's not going to happen. But anyway, I love this town.
I bet she can.
she can. But when I had shoulder surgery with him, he could hardly get nothing done because I was so excited. You remember the excitement? Now I got a list of stuff that I want to get done, and I plan on getting done.
I tell my employees, don't worry so much about being accused of something, because I get complaints all the time. Just worry about whether or not it's true.
Yeah, and my thing is, I don't let things linger. I hit them head on. If I feel like there's an issue with one of y'all, you'll know the next day. It's pretty simple. But anyway, I feel like we had a great meeting, and man, I'm really excited about this park. You know, the other reason I run, my son was going to school, and I said, you gonna want to go to college around here? And he said, probably not, because the teacher said this town's dying. I was like, I want my kids here. I want my kids to work here. I want jobs to come in. This little stuff here is exciting. I told them this year, I said, we're gonna have movies at the river and campouts, and kids get excited. They love that stuff. Kids are our future. And I'd rather have a good time with them and watch the town grow. But I'm excited, and I'm gonna shut up for the time being, but there's no more new business.
Talk
Next,
to your bosses and get them to give us a good deal on a dump truck.
that might be a conflict. So. Right? Mayor to sell a car. Probably.
We could donate one.
Yeah, you know, he probably would. He's that time. We give $40,000, or no, it's $25,000. You probably remember, to the sheriff's department, Suburban. They come in and said, "Hey, we like that Suburban." That was, I don't know, 30,000, maybe 39. I can't remember. And he said, "Give it to them." So we do stuff like that, and I'll even check on that for y'all.
You know, we don't talk about things like it maybe a lot, but for a town our size, we have parks and are building parks second to none. We've upgraded the infrastructure, purchased a town shop park, we built a town shed, we created a brand new fire department, we built the Overlook Trail, we installed public sewer in Middle Creek, we've added new sidewalk and getting ready to add more, just on and on and on, things we've done to improve the town's infrastructure, and that's without raising citizens' tax rates and operate with their budget. So I'm really proud where Cedar Bluff has come from, where we are, and where we're headed. Just a success story.
And I'm sure those 20 tons of gravel will probably help towards that. I mean, I'm sure it'll lower the cost or whatever you was talking
If we
about.
use that project, absolutely.
Yeah, well, basically, we would already have one, but we don't have a dump truck, is that right?
It's been repaired.
They told me, they called 4 or 5 times, "Please come get your gravel, come get your gravel, come." I said, "Man, we don't have a dump truck. Give me some time." But, you know, that'll take care of itself. I think getting a new dump truck and doing stuff for the town's great. So, anyway, if everybody's done, there's no more new business. Next is closed session. Got here a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Thank y'all for coming. See you next time.
Would you like a copy of these? That's what I gave them.